In the summer of 1881, a machine politician from New York, a man deeply entangled in the corrupt spoils system, became President of the United States. Most expected him to protect the old ways of patronage and political favoritism. Instead, he signed the first major civil service reform law in American history. He helped launch the modern United States Navy, and he carried himself with a quiet dignity that surprised even his critics. This is the story of Chester A. Arthur, the president no one expected to become a reformer, and the man who proved that even late in life, character can still be forged. Welcome to Faith and Freedom, the presidents who built America. Chester Allen Arthur was born in 1829 in Fairfield, Vermont, the son of a Baptist preacher. His father's ministry meant that the family moved often, and young Chester grew up with a strong sense of moral order, even if he did not always live by it in his early years. He graduated from Union College, he became a lawyer, and he moved to New York City. There he built a successful practice and became deeply involved in the Republican politics. Chester aligned himself with the stalwart faction, the wing of the party that fiercely defended the spoils system, the practice of rewarding government jobs as political rewards. In 1871, President Ulysses S. Grant appointed him collector of the port of New York, one of the most powerful and lucrative federal positions in the country. The role gave him enormous influence over patronage and political funding, and Arthur became known as a polished, well-dressed, and effective political operator, a man of the machine. Yet even then, those who knew him personally described a man of natural kindness, generosity, and surprising sense of honor beneath the political calculations. When James A. Garfield was assassinated in 1881, Chester Arthur became the fourth president to take office after the death of his predecessor. Many Americans feared the worst. Arthur had never held elected office and was seen as a creature of the New York political machine. Some even worried he might undo the early reform efforts Garfield had begun. But Chester himself seemed stunned by the responsibility. In his first address to Congress, he spoke with unusual humility, asking for the prayers and patience of the American people as he tried to rise to the moment. What followed surprised nearly everybody. The most significant achievement of Chester's presidency was his decision to sign the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act in 1883. After Garfield's assassination by a disgruntled office worker, public demand for reform grew intense. An author who had once benefited from the spoils system now used the power of the presidency to help dismantle it. The Pendleton Act established the first Federal Service Commission and required that many government jobs be filled based on merit rather than political connections. It was a direct blow to the old machine politics Chester had once represented. He did not merely sign the bill, he defended it and worked to see it implemented, even when it cost him political support from within his own party. Arthur continued and expanded the vision Garfield had begun of rebuilding America's neglected Navy. Under his leadership, Congress authorized the construction of the first modern steel warships, the beginning of what would become known as the New Navy. These ships would eventually help transform the United States into a global naval power. Arthur understood that a nation with growing international interest needed a modern fleet. He pushed for these reforms even as many in Congress remained reluctant to spend the necessary funds. But perhaps Arthur's most overlooked accomplishment was the tone he set in the White House. Despite his background, he refused to allow the presidency to become a vehicle for personal enrichment or blatant corruption. He removed some of the most notorious figures from the New York Customs House and worked to produce the most abusive practices of the spoil system even before the Pendleton Act had passed. He also carried himself with personal dignity. A widower who had lost his beloved wife Nell before becoming president, Chester was known for his elegance, his kindness to his staff, and his refusal to turn the White House into a center of political spectacle. In 1884, despite having the opportunity to run for a full term, Chester Arthur chose not to seek his party's nomination. He was already suffering from Bright's disease, a serious kidney condition, and knew his health was failing. Rather than cling to that power, he stepped aside and allowed the Republican Party to choose another candidate. It was a quiet but telling act of statesmanship from a man who had once been deeply enmeshed in the pursuit of political advantage. Chester Arthur was not a man who wore his faith loudly on his sleeve, yet those closest to him noted a genuine moral seriousness that deepened during his time in office. Raised in a devout Baptist home, Chester had drifted from the active practices of his faith during his years in New York politics. But the weight of the presidency, the shock of Garfield's assassination, and the responsibility of leading the nation seemed to awaken something within him. He was known to pray privately and to speak with reverence about the duties of the office. And more importantly, he demonstrated a capacity for moral growth that few expected. The same man who had once thrived in the spoils system became one of its most effective opponents from within the presidency. And his story is a reminder that God can work through imperfect men and that even late in life, character is still being formed. Chester Arthur's presidency teaches us that true reform often comes from the unexpected places and that personal transformation is still possible. We live in a time when many assume that those entrenched in the broken system cannot change. But Chester's story challenges that cynicism. Sometimes the very people we expect to protect the old ways become the ones who help dismantle them. It also reminds us that the presidency is not ultimately about personality or political skill. It is about character under pressure. Arthur did not enter the office as a reformer. He became one when the moment demanded it. May we pray for leaders who, like Arthur in his better moments, are willing to grow with integrity when the weight of responsibility falls upon them. Chester A. Arthur entered the presidency under a cloud of suspicion and left it having helped launch one of the most important reforms in American history. He was not a perfect man, but in a moment that could have deepened corruption, he chose, however imperfectly, to serve the Republic instead. In the end, that may be the most surprising and hopeful lesson of his presidency. I want to thank you for watching Faith and Freedom, the Presidents Who Built America. If this story has encouraged you, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded that change is still possible, even in the most unlikely of men. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. I wish you a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.
3, 2, 1, talk to me.